American explorer John Fremont was seeking fame, glory, and fortune. The opportunity fell into his lap one day when he was commissioned by the United States government to travel to California, and if Mexico and the United States got into a war along the way, he was to try and get an armed resistance going within California against the Mexican government. President James Polk gave Fremont permission to do whatever it was necessary to capture the Mexican province of California. Fremont and his party left St. Louis, Missouri on June 1st, 1845, and arrived in California on December 9th at Sutter's Fort. Upon his arrival, Fremont stirred up the white settlers with promise of protection if Mexico declared war on the United States and that California would become a state. From there, he traveled to Monterey to meet with the United States Consul Thomas Larkin and introduced himself to the Mexican Commandant of Alta California, Jose Castro. Fremont came back a few weeks later, in February of 1846, with 45 armed men from his expedition party as a show of force. Angered by this disrespectful display, Castro ordered Fremont to leave California. Fremont and his buddies moved to the base of the Gabaldon Peak and raised the American flag in an act of defiance. Castro, tired of Fremont, sent a company of soldiers to deal with him. After a 4-day standoff, Fremont and his men fled north towards Oregon. Fleeing up north, Fremont took the opportunity to incite the white settlers to join their cause to fight against the Mexican government when war was declared. The party took to the Sacramento River and traveled northward. Along the way near Lassen's Ranch, on March 30th, 1846, Fremont met several American travelers who told him that over 1,000 Native Americans were getting ready to raid white settlements near the river. Fremont assembled a riverboat crew of over 70 men on a search and destroy mission which would later be known as the Sacramento River Massacre. One of those men was Fremont's right-hand man, Kit Carson. Fremont's party arrived near the Reading Ranch on April 5th, 1846, and spotted a large Wintu camp. He ordered his men to charge the camp, each armed with 2 pistols, a rifle, and a knife. They approached the camp in a 3-sided attack formation. The Wintu made a stand against the invaders due to the Sacramento River at their backs, and most of the camp dwellers were made up of women and children. The men formed a defensive barrier to protect them as they prepared for the attack. Fremont ordered to ask no quarter and to give none, as they fired several times into the Wintu defensive lines, killing dozens of men. When the smoke cleared, they charged at them with their knives and pistols. One member of Fremont's riverboat party, Thomas Breckinridge, documented that the settlers charged into the village, taking the warriors by surprise, and then commenced a scene of slaughter, which is unequaled in the West. The bucks, squaws, and papooses were shot down like sheep, and those men never stopped as long as they could find one alive. The survivors were hunted down on horseback. Others fled to the Sacramento River to try and escape the massacre. Another member of the party, William Tudston, called the incident a slaughter. He claimed that the death toll was 700 Wintu were killed on the land and another 200 drowned in the Sacramento River. Thomas Breckinridge wrote down that only 150 Indians were killed. Breckinridge, who claims to have not partaken in the massacre, wrote, "I think that I hate an Indian as badly as anybody, and have as good reason to hate them, but I don't think that I would have assisted in the slaughter. It takes 2 to fight or quarrel, but in the case that there were one side fighting and the other side trying to escape." Kit Carson recalled the Sacramento River Massacre as it was a perfect butchery. No members of Fremont party were hurt or killed. Fremont and his merry men continued on their wild riverboat ride up the Sacramento River, shooting at any Native American they saw from their boats. On May 5th, Fremont and company camped near the Klamath Lake, and a few days later, on March 8th, he met with his Oregon liaison, Archibald Gillespie, who gave him federal documents, which were copies of the ones that he gave to Thomas Larkin, which authorized Fremont's clandestine military operations in California from his friends in Washington, D.C., and told them that war with Mexico was imminent. The very next day, Fremont and his merry party were attacked by 20 Klamath warriors, who had been following the group after they fired upon and killed several of their tribesmen a few days earlier. The warriors snuck into their camp and killed 4 members of Fremont's party. Fremont went on a search and destroy mission the very next day on May 12th in retaliation in an incident known as the Klamath Lake Massacre, and had his merry band destroy a Klamath village named Doktaqua, which was situated near the lake. The village was burned to the ground and 14 people were murdered. He later blamed the British government, whom he felt were arming the natives and encouraging them to attack American settlers. Fremont's merry band of riverboat travelers headed back to Sutter's Fort when Kit Carson was nearly killed by a Klamath warrior at their camp. His life was saved by Fremont, who crushed the native's body with his horse. On their way back down to the Sacramento River, Fremont and company continued to shoot and kill every native that they saw from their boats. The group participated in a third massacre on their trip back near the Sutter Buttes. On May 30th, Fremont and his band of merry men were camped at the Sutter Buttes preparing for their final leg of their journey back home to Sutter's Fort. While camping, word got around that a local tribe was preparing an all-out attack on the white settlers in the area. Fremont noticed that the locals nearby were acting strange. In reality, they were preparing for the late spring harvest. He ordered his men to attack them and to leave no enemy behind. Dozens were killed in the attack, as the band then began to raid the nearby Mexican rancherias and forced them into submission. Fremont later defended his actions by saying the response was justified because it put an end to the Indians' attacks on the whites, and it put them on good behavior. When Fremont and his band of merry men arrived at Sutter's Fort a few weeks later, in July, he raised the U.S. flag above the fort and declared it now in possession of the American government.